Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. It's been a little bit of a while. Don't worry, the season didn't end and we didn't just all run away kind of to hide in different places. We were always planning to come back and reconvene, but however, life kind of got in the way. We managed to get myself, Ben Jackson, and Scott Coyne together. Unfortunately, no Joris. He's swanning it up in Milan at the moment, as you do. When the season's over, you just go and enjoy yourself a little bit. But Scott, pleasure. How have you been these last couple of weeks without the Pro League?
I have been very well, Benjamin. I have been ridiculously busy. Just in the last few days, I've been writing some articles covering the Red Devils. Obviously, the Euros are coming up, so doing some in-depth previews there for a couple of magazines, which will be landing online, I think, with all of you imminently. So keep an eye out for that. And last night, I was on the World Football Phone-In on Radio 5 Live. Answering listeners' questions and having a jolly good chat about Belgium again. So I haven't stopped.
No, we were just talking before this podcast. As many listeners will know, and if you haven't listened to us before, you can probably guess by Scott's accent that he is Scottish. However, when he appears for these things, he is very much just talking about Belgium because he doesn't know as much about the Scottish team as he does about the Belgian team. So if you want to dish out some honorary citizenship to anyone at the moment, I'm sure Scott is more than willing to take it ahead of the Euros. But yes, you have been busy. And you've also been on the Forgotten Football podcast as well, speaking about Cover Ostend. Definitely check that out. Like, great combination of one of my favourite football podcasts and one of my favourite people coming together to do a podcast together. Scott's been very busy. The rest of us, me and yours, have just been chilling, to be honest, when it comes to things outside of this. But also, on the magazine thing, I've had a little preview of that and it looks fantastic. If you want to kind of deep dive of not just Belgium, but all the teams at the Euros, you definitely have to check that out when it drops because it is really, really good. And it's nice to see a magazine that's just gone and got the experts on those teams and got them to write about those teams. Like, that's the way you got to do it. So, if you want to know about Albania, that's the place to go because they got the expert on Albanian football. For this episode, obviously, it's a little bit of a weird one because we only got one game to kind of talk about, which probably people have forgotten even happened because it happened on the 2nd of June, which feels like a lifetime ago. So we'll quickly discuss the ramifications of that. That was obviously the playoff for the final European ticket. We'll then do our kind of end of season awards. Yours hasn't got a say in this. It's just mine and Scott's. So we very much kind of taken this over. We'll say what we want, and hopefully yours would agree with us. I'm sure he will on a couple of them, but maybe not on some of the other ones. But we'll see. We'll then also talk about the Euros. Even though Scott's been doing a million things about the Euros, it makes sense to kind of get him to give his little spiel on what he thinks Belgium can do here. I've had a little look at the kind of opponents and kind of the other stuff. So I'd like to just kind of, speak my mind on the Euros. Very excited for that to start. Always love an international football tournament. There's just something about it. You just can't get that feeling anywhere else. But before we get to that, let's get to Genk against Ghent, every Englishman's favourite contest. Thankfully, everyone turned up to the right place this year. We'll keep making that joke because it's just the funniest thing that even a Belgian went to the wrong place. Obviously, this was a winner takes all. Before the game, wasn't it? Van Huysenbeek was like, I wish this game was over 2 legs. I think it's not fair that it's only over 1 leg. His side won, so he probably doesn't care anymore. I don't know why he cared in the first place. It literally meant nothing to him unless he had a massive European ticket qualification bonus. Andre Hulsager scored the only goal of the game. No European football for Genk. Obviously, that'll have ramifications for their squad building next year. That's going to be under Torsten Fink. He's left St. Truden. He's now joined Genk. Janis Stoikers has already made the move. There's a couple of others that they also want to bring in from St. Truden to Genk. Always a bit sceptical about that, bringing players in from your old place, because sometimes it can just create a little bit of a weird situation. I'm not sure it's as dramatic as this, but if people remember watching the Damned United with Leeds, when he brings in players from, was it Brian Clough, does it? He brings in players from Derby, and the Leeds players just like, what are you doing? He has just told them that they won all their trophies from cheating as well, so he probably hadn't mixed up with the best thing. But if you haven't seen that film, definitely watch it. It's so funny, and Clough's a bit of a menace when it comes to that sort of stuff. But
read the book as well. There's another thing, Ben. The book is really good. I saw the film first, like most people, and then went back to the book. But the book's great. And if you enjoy that book, another book shout out from the same writer is the one about Bill Shankly, Red or Dead. That's fantastic as well for similar reasons. Anyway, I digress.
Recommend. Look, it's end of season. We're just chucking loads of random stuff at you: magazines, book recommendations, all that sort of stuff. So obviously, again, get that final kind of. It's a European ticket, but they got to qualify for the Conference League. Genk miss out. Kind of immediate thoughts on that, Scott? What's your kind of feeling around kind of that final game now that we've had well over a week to kind of digest it all?
Well, this game is going to be subtitled Joris's Rage because I'm just going to never forget the aftermath of that. We couldn't talk about it. Joris was, pretty angry about the outcome of that. Your season effectively comes down to that one game, and you know that you're going to salvage something, if you can secure that European place. And that inconsistency that's kind of plagued their playoffs, just bit them one last time. And although they didn't play badly, I don't think they played well enough to win it either. Ghent obviously getting the job done. A moment of quality with the goal, seeing them over the line. And Big Hein, who you mentioned, obviously will be really delighted because for weeks he's been just trying to focus on that one thing. It's been that open secret for months, really. That he was going to be leaving at the end of the season. It's confirmed a few weeks before the end, and he did kind of seem like a lame duck. We thought this could come crashing down. He was very public about how frustrated he was, but fair play to him. He stayed focused and he's kept his squad focused and done very Ghent-like things once again, and kind of got them over the line, got the prize. It's just so ironic as well that the manager who's now going to be leading them in Europe is the manager that is replacing him, who is leaving Joris's side, Genk, the side that have kind of lost out. Football is such a strange, cruel thing sometimes, the way that it haunts you in these kind of ironic ways. Ghent, in truth, they had it done, they had it sealed kind of quite early, didn't they, Ben? I don't think, I thought that they would win this just because of how inconsistent that Ghent had been. I felt that having the home advantage should have made more of a difference than it did ultimately, which maybe explained why Ghent were even more delighted, as you were saying. Hein wasn't happy that it was a one leg shootout, but he didn't need to be too worried in the end.
Yeah, and I completely disagree with him anyway. I think at the end of the day, Genk finished higher than you in the league, so in theory they should have at least some sort of advantage going into that playoff game, because if it is just a one-off game, it does allow kind of for like the random act, I guess, that could happen in terms of an inferior team could win it that shouldn't win it. This is just like 90 minutes. So I get that, but Genk should have as much of an advantage going into that game because of where they finished. They finished fifth and you finished seventh, technically, didn't you? So it's kind of like you've kind of leapfrogged two teams to get into that European space. Like, just be happy about it. It's funny that now Vranken's left Genk and now he goes to Ghent and he gets the European football that would he have got if he stayed at Genk. It seemed like him leaving kind of did take a lot out of their season anyway. It's all that kind of uncertainty. And I know Joris was not happy when we kind of muted this kind of idea that actually it's for Torsten Fink, it's definitely the best thing to kind of bring in his ideas and his style of play, to not have the midweek kind of fixtures to deal with as well. He can really kind of implement his style and get as much out of the training ground as possible. Whether that's good for Genk in terms of finances and stuff like that is different. But I think for Fink and his kind of, especially that first season for that style of play, and we've seen it kind of how well Anderlecht have done without European football, like in order for like Reimer and Fredberg to get these players in and kind of get them going, and then they wouldn't. I don't think they'd have survived as much as they did with the injuries that piled up at the end of the year if they'd had European football as well. So we have, our European ticket holders. We obviously got Club, Union, Cercle, and Anderlecht, and now Ghent. Hopefully everyone makes it to the competitions proper. We could really do with that. And it's just going to be another good year of European football, hopefully, with the Conference League, which is kind of still the one we're looking at, thinking that's the one that Club obviously showed that you can, if you put your mind to it, go well. And Ghent, obviously, going into next season, they've got the money. they've got a manager that they should be able to put some kind of tools at his disposal that he can do quite a good job with. He didn't feel like he got that at Genk, but Genk they've got the finances. They've brought in a striker already. They look like they kind of be quite active in and around the transfer market anyway. So they could really have a go. It depends where their priorities are going to lie next season, but they could really have a right go at kind of battling on all three fronts. We'll see if that happens, because I feel like we say this going into every season with the Buffaloes, and then they finish in the playoff 2 and win playoff 2, and they're back to kind of where they were again the next season. Yes, Scott, any last thoughts on that before we move on to clearly the most coveted awards in the Belgian football kind of calendar, our players of the season and all that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. Well, we did get the fixture announcement for next season. They were kind of released today, and on the subject of the Buffaloes specifically, they've got a very good start. This is a side that are quite notorious for a slow start. For the most part, but I noticed today when I was just having a casual glance at the first 6 weeks or so for most of the sides that they've got as good an opening as you would like. So maybe that adds a little bit of pressure to Wouter Frankenbol. We will see. He's, I think, very happy to have made the switch. I think it was clear that his relationship with Dimitri de Conde and Peter Croonen and other members of kind of the senior footballing team at Genk kind of was pretty irreparable. They didn't see eye to eye on the squad assessment, and I know our Joris was saying that he felt that there's been some misjudgments made there, maybe on more than one person's part about things, and that they can't afford to kind of get that wrong again. Even though they've got a very good coach now in Torsten Fink, I think that's a really good fit. Whether it'll work or not, we don't know, but I think it is a good appointment for lots of reasons. And the other thing, before we get to handing out our own gongs, you were talking about Europe there. The Pro League as well, just over the last week, have postponed the club vote on restructuring as well. It's been knocked back 2 or 3 weeks. That big decision on whether to go with a plan which means a smaller playoff one with 4 teams, a bigger European playoff which takes in even more teams, which is probably a good thing, albeit that would work in a knockout format. Which raises the stakes a little bit. But it does mean a side that has had a notoriously poor season effectively can qualify for Europe, which, depending on which way you look at it, is either a very good thing or slightly ridiculous. And we could potentially be losing the relegation playoffs, just a straight drop. I like the plan. I know there's a number of clubs that don't support it at the moment for their own reasons, one of which is Cercle, who are enjoying being a playoff one side now, and think that this plan would reduce their chances of them repeating that next season. And I understand that. Equally, Ghent are unhappy because they know that looking over their last 2 seasons, being a playoff 2 side when they probably shouldn't have been, they want a bigger playoff 1 as well. So I think there's going to be a little bit of tinkering with that yet. And don't be surprised if we see a 6-team playoff 1 rather than a 4 in the end, under the format I've talked about as well, to kind of satisfy some of those sides to get it over the line. But that's something to keep an eye on, which we'll update you all on when we do our big bumper pre-season previews, because next season is the last season on the current TV deal, which is why they're kind of trying to agree this change, because the TV companies, Ben, have been going, look, give us consistency. We don't really care what your format is. We just want you to stick to it for a 5-year term of a contract, and we're good. So yeah, all of this is still up in the air as always.
Yeah, it's just like I get because I think the times we've done this podcast, there's just been so many different ones. My idea is, instead of a 6-team playoff 1, you have a 16-team playoff 1. Everyone plays each other twice, and after 30 games, that's it. End of the season, and you just decide then. Like that's what everyone else does. But yours isn't here to tell us off for talking about stupid playoffs and all that sort of stuff. But we're never going to get rid of it. There's going to be some sort of vibe of it. It has created entertainment, and I get the arguments for both sides of that. But let's move on. Let's talk about this season then. Player of the season is where we're going to start, and this one, I think I had this guy in mind very early on, probably about halfway through the season. I was like, this guy's probably going to be my player of the season if he keeps this up. Just before this, we obviously spoke, and you said exactly the same thing. We're going to say that Joris said exactly the same thing. We don't know. He's having too much fun in Milan. But we obviously, most people probably know we went with Cameron Puertas, a 25-year-old Swiss midfielder from Union Saint-Gilloise. Unfortunately, not at the Euros, because I don't think he's actually got the right to play for Switzerland yet. Because I was like, there's no way this guy's not in that team. Like, surely the way he played this season, but he's not. He could play for Spain. He could play for Switzerland. He can definitely. I think he's one of those. He could definitely play for Spain now, but he can't play for Switzerland yet. So he's still kind of waiting for that to kind of go through. No idea how Swiss citizenship works. So if people want to give us a lowdown of that, please feel free. But 56 games this season, 14 goals, 23 assists. It's the assist numbers that really catch the eye. And the context of him coming into this, isn't it, Scott? Because last year it didn't really start. He had to settle for time off the bench. They obviously had Leeson, they had Lennon. They obviously had Teddy Tuma was kind of the man in midfield. Tuma leaves, Puertas is kind of elevated into the spot. I remember speaking about it a bit last year. I was just like, I really like the way this guy plays. And this year he just completely took the league by storm. Absolute fantastic season. I think he is fully deserving of being our player of the season. I'd be surprised if they are able to keep hold of him. I can't imagine that there aren't like a million clubs with him on a short list. But Union being Union, they're going to demand a heavy price, and they should definitely demand a heavy price for this guy because he's just so good. Cost them just over €1 million from Lucerne Sport in Switzerland back in last January, wasn't it? January 2022, so 2 years ago now. What a player. What an absolute gem of a player. Scott, your opinions of him, and I know you probably want to add a couple of kind of honourable mentions because I feel like we should, but Puertas is kind of, for me, was standout player this season.
Absolutely, and I can't disagree with that at all, and I'm not even going to try to. I think most people will be absolutely down with that. I think his link-up play has just been sensational, and we know because of we've raved enough and told people often enough on the record and off it about how great the recruitment is in Union and how much other teams can learn from that. When you think about how much they paid for him and the return they've got for that, and on top of that, the potential return again financially on a sale, that model is just, it's on fire. Really, it is. Maximising the potential in a short space of time often, attracts the interest, drives the value up, and it's a win on the park for them because they've done their job well, and then it becomes a win longer term because of the potential return on a transfer fee. And we know the real skill in this, the real art, is making the call on the exit point. And if you get that right, then that's when, the whole system kind of goes again, and nobody's better, I don't think, in Belgium in doing that than them. They've proved that consistently as well. So on that, which is a slight aside to his own, domestic season, where he's been brilliant. He probably could have had more goals as well. I mean, he's actually, we're talking about player of the season here. It's worth highlighting. He's missed some hilarious sitters at various points as well. I know that's been a source of amusement to Joris a few times. He said on more than one occasion, how can he even miss that? So for a player who's had a great season, he's had some great missteps as well, but we will allow him that because the good stuff's been really, really good, and he's totally deserving out of our Player of the Season award, which is the real Player of the Season award. Often we agree with the official awards coming out of the Pro League. It's not that often we do disagree, but we do have a few that are different this year. You mentioned honourable mentions. Certainly in my part, when I was thinking about this today, a few other names to throw out there because these players have all been very, very good in different ways as well. Another player at Union, a teammate of Cameron Puertas, is Amura, brilliant as well. 18 goals and 4 assists domestically. In the league, and he looked at one point like he was just not going to stop scoring goals at all, like a greyhound out of the traps. every week almost. And again, a bit like Puertas, he had that thing of he missed some sitters as well. He was almost too fast at some points. Really, really impressive as well. And again, I think there's a big return there coming. Same model again. Other players, a player here who we've criticised a little bit, which we can do. That's all right because we're very close watchers of what's going on. The good, the bad, and the ugly is Hans van Aken at Club Brugge. He's had a pretty good season despite some of our criticisms. 5 goals and 8 assists. Doesn't sound that remarkable, but for a player who's sort of 32 now, the value he brings aside from his output to that squad and that club's pretty immeasurable. And he finished the season very, very strongly in the playoffs with them and was a big part in kind of getting them over the line. A couple of others, one that Joris will be pleased to hear, and that's Adam Zorgan. I know he's a big favourite of Joris's. Hasn't had a great season in terms of his actual output, but the thing is his chance creation and his line-breaking passes and his ability to get Charleroi into those creative positions where ultimately they've been able to get themselves safe has got a lot to do with him still. And you do wonder how their season might have finished if he hadn't had a pretty respectable season for a side that have been, turgid, as we know, all year. And the other one who probably had a shout for player of the season, I think, and that's Anderlecht's Anders Dreyer. Really enjoyed watching him this season. He's been really good, really important for Anderlecht, almost winning the league, but not quite. They'll be really hoping that they can get at least a similar output from him next season as well. So there's a few honourable mentions from me.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of players, aren't there, that you can kind of go through and look at and be like, yeah, that you could stick him in. Henri Gendelman for like a couple of days where he scored like 1 million goals. Like for that period, I think it was like a week or so, he was the best player in the world. Couple of I'm always this whenever we like kind of like project ahead for the season, I'm always thinking Andreas Skov Olsen is going to be my player of the season because I feel like he is one of the best players in the league, but he's just so injury prone that he doesn't get the consistency that he needs to be in the running for this. Back end of the season, I guess you could kind of give, for me, I'd give like Rob Scoofs a good shout out as well. I think he really did drag Mechelen with Harsey, like him and Harsey together, he really did turn things around, kind of show why he's one of those top central midfielders in there. But yeah, I think Puertas and some of those the guys you mentioned, I'd put above the guys that I just mentioned for sure. Let's go to goalkeeper of the season. For me, again, this was a really easy one, and this one there's something I really have enjoyed about this person's performances this season. So last year, this guy played just 9 games in the Pro League. Season before that, just 7 games. Season before that, I think he played just 3 games. He's 27. He's a very tall Brazilian. He's got an eye for an assist as well from his own net. He has had to wait a very long time for this kind of chance where he started the season as a side's number 1 and then they brought in someone else. So first time they brought in Thomas Didleon. Last year brought in Radoslav Majecki. He just waited. This year he gets his chance. It's Varlason of Cercle Bruges. I just thought he's been absolutely fantastic this season. Made some massive, massive saves for them. Like I said, got the assists as well, which is always helps. But he just seemed, didn't he, Scott, to like when they needed someone to make something happen or they were under a bit of pressure, he'd put off that save and you could just see the club, like, or the rest of the players were like, okay, yeah, no, like we can win this game because we got this guy in goal that's making fantastic saves. And yeah, I'm really happy for him. He seems like such a genuinely nice guy. Clearly well loved at Cercle. He's been there for so long now without really getting his chance, and he just completely took it with both hands this season. And you started the year thinking like, oh, where are they going to go with goalkeeper? Because Majecki, that to be fair to him, was fantastic for them last year. And I thought, are they going to trust Varlason, or they've kind of shown they haven't in the past? But this year, he has really, really shown that he's a quality goalkeeper. And in my mind, I couldn't really think of many outside of him. He was by far and away my number 1 goalkeeper for this season.
Yeah, it's a great shout. And the interesting thing about Varlason is, when you consider that in the modern game, you need to be good with your feet as a goalkeeper for a number of reasons. Distribution, first of all, and then, goalkeeper is your first line of attack. That's where it starts, in the modern game. So, Varlason's contributions there are particularly noteworthy. You mentioned his assists, something that, most goalkeepers don't pitch in. They might have great distribution, but Varlason, has directly contributed. I mean, I think officially he's got 3, I think it is, but there's another one that I think he should have been given. So I'm arguing he's got 4, and I can think of another couple that very almost came off. So you're looking at, almost 5 or 6 assists from a goalkeeper, which is just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And he's been so consistent as well. I mean, his goal prevention rate, if you look at some of his numbers over the season, is 11.8, I think, on average. When you look at his joint stats, which is a lot. I think it's not the highest. I think Schmeichel at Anderlecht's goal prevention was about 14. But to get 12 is seriously impressive stuff. And his save ratio on average per game is almost 4. So you're looking at about 70, 74, 75%, seriously high. And obviously he played every game as well. So the consistency, not only of his fitness, but his shot stopping and his attacking output. That's why I think he really deserves this, because he's adding an element here that is arguably the most important element to the modern goalkeeping role that they often don't get credit for. People go, well, I've seen lots of people, and you'll have seen them as well, Ben, on social media going, it doesn't really matter that a goalkeeper, can't play out from the back. There's alternatives to that. As long as he's a good shot stopper, he's a goalkeeper, he's not a striker. You ask any coach and they will tell you that, that's not going to cut it anymore. And it doesn't cut it in this league or any other kind of top league. On any day of the week. It's so important. And that element, that attacking element, I think he's been streets ahead of almost anybody else in goalkeepers in Belgium. A couple of honorary shout outs while we're talking about goalkeepers. We should mention Martin van der Voort at Genk, because he's now leaving. Obviously, we've known that for a year or so now. But he's leaving, and unfortunately he wasn't able to leave on a celebratory note. We've already talked about that. Going to be very interesting to see what road Joris's side go down with goalkeepers next, because that's kind of up for grabs. And also a mention for Herv the Cat Coffee, long-time favourite of all 3 of us here. The Trident are all big fans. He's going to France, he's going to Lens, and there's a big Belgian connection as well there now, isn't there, Ben? Because Will Still's confirmed as the new T1 at Lens. His brother Ed Still's going to be his T2, who's been around in Belgium, and the youngest Still brother, Nicholas, is going to be the video analyst there. So whatever way you look at it, in Lens, who've been quite consistent in France for the last few years, they're either getting freedom of the city or the family are getting banned from the region at some point. So it's all or nothing.
Yeah, for the Stills. They're so funny, aren't they? I don't know, they just crack me up as a family. Like the way they're just like so engrossed in football, but all working together. Like it just, not many families can do it, and not many families can do it successfully. That's for sure. Yeah, great honourable mentions. I think, I don't know, this year I've kind of like, outside of Vardason, I have really struggled to like pinpoint some great goalkeeping. Like there's been some great goalkeeping moments, but maybe not as much kind of consistency. I think Mignolet obviously has made up some good saves. Nordin Jackers deserves kind of a mention just for coming in and keeping them going. Do you know what I mean? He came in like, there was kind of some uncertainty, which was, yeah, I've always rated him. Like I know me and you have definitely always rated him. We've always said this guy should be starting somewhere. It ended up being Club Brugge for a little bit, and Club Brugge fans were very grateful that he was there. I know there's a lot of kind of like people that will probably maybe be going into next season thinking, oh, maybe like if Mignolet just kind of drops off a little bit, we're fine because we've got Jackers and he can come in and do a job, and he definitely can. So he definitely deserves a shout out. But yeah, outside of that, I think there's been like Westerlo really struggled to find a consistently good goalkeeper this season. Of course, like kind of chopped and changed a little bit. Slonina at Open, like he didn't really have a chance. To be fair, did he? Like Kook had some good moments again, like, but again, I wouldn't. It doesn't feel like that season where he was really, really good, does it? Where we were like, yeah, this guy's one of the top ones. It doesn't feel like he was quite there. So yeah, there's been a couple of kind of iffy-ish, I guess, performances from goalkeepers. Suzuki at St. Sudan, to be fair, like he had a very good season. I'd actually quite like to give him that. some moments with like iffy kind of moments, but as a young goalkeeper, like you can kind of go through them. Genk, like you mentioned, they've probably got some random kid that's going to come in and be the future Belgian number one. Like if you ever check like Belgian internationals and look who they used to play for, like yeah, it's probably Genk. Like the way those guys produce goalkeepers, Courtois, Van der Voort, Casteels, like just so many. So there's probably another one there. I mean, didn't Union just take one of the young goalkeepers from Genk as well? So they must have a load up their sleeve if they're able to let him go. So I'm sure Joris will be able to give us a name or two for next season that he thinks is going to be good because yeah, they're very good at doing that. Manager of the season. So this again, I think this is where we do differ from the Pro League awards. And I think this is, from my opinion anyway, like nothing against what Blessing's done. I think he has been a fantastic coach this season. I think he definitely deserved an award for what he did. But the journey that this guy has kind of taken this club on this season, I think that's kind of, and maybe there is some bias from us in this because we've kind of not been on the journey with this club, but we've been kind of given access to the club and seen kind of how the journey has gone, which we have kind of with Union as well. But we've gone for Miran Muslic, and I think, yeah, the job that he's done has just been incredible. And is him and Blessing is very similar, isn't it? That they built this kind of this culture, and to be fair, Blessing just came into a culture that was already there, and has kind of it just suited him. Like it's a culture that he kind of agrees with, and he's kind of built it a little bit up a little bit more. Whereas I feel like Muslic, he inherited a decent culture under Talhammer that like it was kind of still, it wasn't really synergy with everything that was going on. And he's kind of synergized everything together. He's got the players playing the right way. The players that they really enjoy playing there. You've got players like Varlason who've waited around for ages come in and they excel. Like players are stepping up left, right, and centre. Tactically as well, I think they've shown that they don't really care what people think about how they play. They will play a way that they think is going to win them that game. If that's fun, exciting, attacking football, they'll play it. If it's we're just going to sit deep and we're going to pump it long and we think that's the best way we're going to play it, we're going to do that. And it's effective. They're in Europe. They've got European football. This is a club that was almost relegated a couple of seasons ago. Muslic is kind of, it's when everything clicked, isn't it, Scott? This is when the vision that had been kind of being pushed on the club finally kind of met with someone that was able to carry it out with the playing staff. And Muslic definitely deserves so much credit. And that's kind of why I felt he was my coach of the season. Blessing, very close second for me. A couple of others as well. I mean, Frey Alexanderson, I think you're probably going to want to mention him. If he'd been there all season, I think I could have probably given it to him for what he did to save Kortrijk. But I wanted to go with someone from the whole season. But Alexanderson to me is one of those and really exciting up and coming young coaches as well that you put in the category of these guys. But yeah, we've all been fans of Muslic when he almost took our arms off with a handshake. And yeah, he was our manager of the season award, and I think it's fully deserving for the incredible job he's done with Circle.
Yeah, I've been lobbying for this one for a while. I've even name dropped it on some of our recordings recently because I knew this moment was coming, and I just thought, regardless of what road the Pro League go down with their own one, I felt this was the one where we were going to diverge. Totally deserved. When you have, as you were saying, kind of alignment across your football and strategy and your operations, the person responsible for this ultimately is Carlos Avina. He comes in, changes the operation there, you know, and the structure and the objectives quite radically. Brings in a team of people who are, you hope, aligned with that. They've made some tweaks and changes. The moment it really starts to click, obviously, is when Mira Muslic replaces Dominic Talhammer. Mira Muslic was on Dominic Talhammer's staff as well, so he's been there throughout this whole period. So he's been there from the beginning of this journey, if you like. And in a way, what's happened here is you've got a side who, and you were talking a few weeks ago about, perpetual relegation survivors on the last day for a long time. Within a kind of a 3-year cycle, they've become a playoff one side, which just shows you what can happen if your operations are right. And the ultimate reward is what has happened at the end of the season. Not only do you get a playoff one spot, which in itself I think is just massive. That would have been payoff in itself. But you then go and secure European football off the back of that as well. So, no room for complacency there either. And I just love the way that he talks to players. That squad responds to him and obviously loves him, which is important. Your players have to want to play for you, and it's really clear that they do. They've never gone more than 3 games on the bounce, defeated during the season, which is big in Belgium as well. So they've never gone in a slump where you thought, I'm starting to get worried about the direction this is going in here. They've always been able to correct those little minor bumps when they've come along and go on a positive run again. And that tells me that other things inside the club are right. The data, the stats, the video analysis, a lot of it is being applied in the right way because they're learning the lessons of those minor setbacks and challenges that come up. There was one moment that I just loved this season, and it was towards the end of the season. Cercle released a video. I think it was the weekend the playoffs actually started. They released a video compilation of some training ground material and some dressing room chat from Miron. And there was one particular phrase before a game where he was talking about, the things you expect to hear: go out there, high tempo, press hard, do your individual jobs. And this was the bit that got me. He said, go out there and challenge with heart, the circle away. And just that phrase has kind of stuck with me because they obviously talk a bit like they do Union a lot. There's an identity and a profile there, and a culture inside the club that is extremely important and that is the foundation of all of that. And that phrase just spoke to that. Managers would be a little bit more colourful when using a phrase like that normally, but it was very descriptive and very measured in a targeted way. And it just spoke to how eloquent he was. I did notice as well that the other week when Miron arrived for the official Pro League awards, he was filing up the red carpet and, the camera crew were asking players and coaches and staff when they arrived, describe your season in one word. And without even thinking about it, Miron smiled, looked straight down the camera and went, fantastic. And of course it's been fantastic.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That kind of assessment of it for sure. Absolutely fantastic. And you mentioned that kind of that circle away thing. And I wonder, that's clearly something that has been brought through. And this is kind of, we want to build this identity and this culture. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you contrast that with the side next to them, but literally next door to them, the Amber as well, they've had this culture that almost kind of the players have had to carry it and they've had to try and get the managers to buy into it. And that's been the problem with a couple of the past managers like Scott Parker, Ronnie Dyler, Carl Hufkins a little bit as well. The players have been like, yeah, they didn't really get the culture that we've got. And in Nicky Hines obviously coming in, he gets the culture, and you see that it's just it's quite weird, isn't it? We haven't had the coach that won the league winning this kind of award. We're actually no, because the coach wasn't there for half of the season. But it is that kind of culture building thing, and it's so important in sports just to have that kind of identity, especially in a team sport like this where you can kind of go through the mill of players quite easily. And to be fair to Circle as well, just think about it, they lost Dino Hotic, they lost Ueda, a couple of really key players that they did lose over the summer, but they didn't go out and spend loads of money to replace either of those two. They just, obviously, Le Marchal came in on loan, probably as the kind of, you could call him the Hotic kind of replacement. Didn't go get another striker until January. They were like, no, we've got Denki, we'll be fine with him. Lost Yanga Boho midway through the season. They lost players, and then they've just kind of internal building and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, fantastic is definitely the word for it. Torsten Fink as well, we'll give him a shout out. He did a fantastic job at St. Truden. Maybe a tongue-in-cheek one, but Rick DeMille saving 2 clubs from relegation. Not often you do that in a season, is it? I'm excited to see what he does at Charleroi, to be fair. I think, again, regardless of how that game kind of against Genk ended, and he definitely was the one that kind of got shoved under the bus by everyone involved. Great coach. I think he's a great coach, and I think he'll do well next season. So I'm actually really looking forward to kind of the coaches that we've got in place next year. I think we've got some really exciting ones. Even the teams that have come up, in to see how Dirk Kuyt does now with a full season. Timmy Simon's obviously moving over to Westerlo. You got De Rock at Antwerp, Everard at Dender. You've got all these guys kind of in place that I feel like it should be a really strong coaching season at least, which could be quite fun. In terms of how people are going to, like, you're really going to be tested, aren't you, every week by these kind of the tactics and everything like that, because people look like they're in quite a good position. Young player of the season. Let's go on to that again. A consensus pick from us. A guy whose kind of goals and assists just never really showcase how bloody good he is, and you have to really watch him to realise how bloody good he is. Bilal El-Khanous, probably the final year I'm presuming we're going to see him here, because without the European Football Gang will need money. They can get a lot of money for the Moroccan international. I was looking at his numbers, and again, you look at them, you're like, it doesn't really show like what he's been able to achieve this season. So he played, just getting my numbers to load. 51 games this year, 3 goals and 8 assists for like kind of a creative attacking midfielder. You're like, is that it? Is that all like we got out of it? But he's so much more than that. He creates. He's the like, kind of that hockey assist guy, like the creator before the assist, that sort of thing. Everything kind of like run through him. He's just, for a guy at just 20 years old, he just plays so smart, doesn't he? Like, he's just so smart about his awareness of the pitch and all that. And it's very difficult to find a player under the age of 21 that's better in this league than El-Khanous. He is just, there's a reason he's hyped up, and if you don't really understand it, you've just got to watch the kid play.
Yeah, I think it is very much about watching him, because I think if you looked at just some of the numbers in terms of his outputs, you know, I mean, you've given us some of them there. You might be tempted to go, what's the big deal? But we're talking about a very big deal here. I've seen people this season who were quite openly saying, look, I haven't seen that much of him. And I probably haven't seen enough of him to comment. Good thing to do, folks. If anyone asks you about a player and you've not seen a fair bit of them, probably best to steer clear, so you don't make a fool of yourself. That's always a good bit of advice. But yeah, Bilal El-Khanous, I mean, this is a sensational player when you think about it. I mean, he's, 21. And the thing to look out for is, line-breaking passes, his reading of the game, his vision, his aggression in the right way, I think is a big part of his game. And I think, you can't really criticise the output when you consider his age. Another year, 18 months from now, he's going to be doubling, trebling those figures wherever he is, you would kind of hope. So if anything, he's actually ahead of schedule. He's one of those players who can frustrate you sometimes because of what he's capable of. But when he's been very good this season, he's been pretty extraordinary. And at times, he has almost carried Genk. I'm not sure if Joris would agree with me about that, but he's been one of those players who, when he stepped up and really produced some goods in games, and sometimes he floats in and out of games as well. Because he's young, he's not necessarily got that consistency to continue that through a whole game yet. But he's looked mature and kind of up for it in a way that lots of other players in that Genk side kind of haven't this season. And I hope he's still around, because another year in Belgium will do him no harm at all. He will play more. I think he will enjoy playing under Wouter Rankin. Most young players do. He likes working with young players, and for the most part, he's very good at it. He's got a good track record at doing that. You can't disagree with that one. So it's another one where us in the Pro League are actually aligned. But yeah, his reading of the game and his creativity, particularly the weighting of his passing. See, if you look at him technically as well, that's just, it's just kind of gorgeous. Couple of other shout outs from me while we're talking about young player. We talked a little bit about some of these players actually before we recorded as well. Matthias Fernandez Pardo at Ghent has had a really good season, albeit he's kind of exploded through the playoffs, had a great playoffs. He's only started 11 in 16 games. The majority of those were in the playoffs. 8 goals and 2 assists. Really, really good. And he's in an interesting position now, because I think he's proved now, where kind of that last quarter of the season, that there's a real player there who has consistency and a bit of quality in him. I wonder how he's feeling about Andre Gudjonsson, Eider's boy, kind of coming in which was confirmed a few days ago, because I don't think anybody thought that Fernandes Pardo was going to be the main man next season, but he was certainly saying, look at me, I'm here, I've got a lot to offer. So it's going to be very interesting to see, how things pan out for him there, whether he goes somewhere else or whether he even goes out on loan or what happens, because they're looking at bringing in another striker as well. So if I was him, I'd be thinking, okay, which way is this going to go? But he's certainly given Wouter Rankin a lot to think about. And I think he'll be quite excited by what he's seen. And another couple who are worth a big shout out, Jarni Stoikers, who just yesterday completed his move to Genk. He's gone back there, product of their academy. He's been reunited with Torsten Fink, another really, really good player, I think. Tremendous potential still. I think he's going to be a really big player for Torsten Fink there. He knows him well. He knows what he can do. They obviously get on well together. And another player to complete the Torsten Fink link with potentially Genk as well, although there's a number of other clubs really interested in him. Bit of a fight on their hands for him is Matt Smets, who everyone will know, 20-year-old centre-half, remarkable, not only played every game, but every minute of every game. We love to see that no matter what age you are and in what position you are, but this is the best possible thing you can get if you are Matt Smets and you want to continue developing. And thankfully, he's had a great season behind him, not just because of all that playing time, but he's played under a T1 who, albeit he's left St Truiden now, as undoubtedly been a big part in him kicking on as well. So he's one to watch out for where he's going to go next, because at the moment, poor Binky is sitting, crying into a puddle on his swing in his cage, wondering who's going to be left at this rate, because the core talents that were the big players for Torsten Fink all look at the moment like they're going to leave. And Andre Pinto, who is the sporting director at St Truiden, is yet again facing a pre-season where he's effectively having to start again. The main players are going to go. You've lost a coach who probably was ahead of schedule, and you were hoping you were going to be able to keep. They've said that quite publicly. Some of the wording in their press material in recent weeks has been, I don't know, I'd maybe use the word unwise / unfortunate. It was a little bit sulky, I thought. But that tells you how disappointed they are that they're losing some important people.
Yeah, it fills you with a little bit of concern for them, doesn't it? Like the way they've kind of responded to it, because even like we looked at them last year and we were like, they don't seem like they have enough, because they had all these young players that we'd never really seen that hadn't been tested. These players have now been tested. They're pretty good. They're going to leave. So now we're going into another season where it's like, where are the kind of you've not really given a generational chance for the next crop of these young players to come through, have you? Like, we haven't seen. We're not like, it's fine. They've probably got this guy, and this guy in the background. Like, they're going to have to get the money out, and yeah, it's a shame really, because it looked like they're building something great. But that's what happens when you're a club of that size and that sort of kind of, you don't have the financial muscle to go to Fink and say, look, because I believe if that you could have offered him the chance to bring in some more players and do that sort of stuff, I think he probably would have stayed. He seemed pretty happy there, but I think Genk gives him the opportunity to kind of elevate himself. And let's not pretend that this guy isn't an ambitious head coach. Like, he's not there for this. He did a very good job in the J League. Get coaches from the J League people, because they seem to do a good job. One more honourable mention from me on young player. Marius Stroikens from Anderlecht. Thought he had a really, really good season, actually. 40 games, 6 goals, 7 assists. Stepped up for them in some big ways when really needed to. Plays in loads of random positions. I thought Brian Reimer seemed to really like him and kind of rely on him and trust him in big matches and kind of important games. So I think, Super Mario had a good season. I'll hopefully see a bit more of him next year. I just keep forgetting he's so young. Like, he does kind of play beyond his age, and he was outperforming some of the more experienced guys that they had at Anderlecht. A lot of those Anderlecht players are off to the Euros. I think almost all the Danes got called up. So there's a nice little Anderlecht contingent with the Danish squad. It's like all of them and Skov Olsen coming together, isn't it? So we're just going to have a little chat about Euro 2024 before we round off. We thought, why not? We're getting in the spirit. It starts on Friday. Just a reminder that Belgium's group is So they open up against, I believe it's Slovakia, isn't it? So they've got Slovakia, Romania, and Ukraine. Slovakia first, then Romania, and then they finish off against Ukraine. Um, we'll go through the ramifications of that in a bit and kind of like how the groups are going to work and all that sort of stuff and give my opinion. But Scott, I'll go to you first. Obviously, you've been talking a lot about the Belgian kind of team over the last couple of days with radio and all and kind of that. What is your opinion on what's going to happen, and what do you think people's perception is? Because obviously you're responding to questions, and questions, however we want to ask them, they are weighted a certain way, and you can kind of get there's an opinion behind it and the responses you've got. So, how do you think they're going to do, and what's kind of your feeling about what other people are going to kind of feel about this team?
Well, I've been getting asked a lot of questions about this in various formats recently, and there's a number of different ways I think you can look at this. I think you have to kind of separate the qualifying campaign from what's about to come. I was very keen to stress that to everybody that I've been talking to. And it doesn't matter whether you're Belgium or another country, qualifying campaigns are a very different thing to what I always call the real deal of major tournament football, because they're different levels to me. We know that Belgium have had a very good qualifying campaign. You know, after the World Cup, Roberto Martinez falls on his sword and moves on. The timing was right. Domenico Tedesco's comes in last February and really has had a very good first year, undefeated in qualifying, top scorers, best defence, generally nothing but positives, with the sole exception of Courtois Gate, which some people still want to kind of whine on about a bit, which I find annoying, because the decision was made quite quickly. It was obvious that there was not going to be a reconciliation, despite there being mistakes made in both parts. The decision was made, they moved on. And for me, the main thing was the rest of the squad didn't let it get to them. There wasn't this falling into separate camps and people falling out and affecting performances. Players kept their head down and got the job done, and that told me that they were behind the coach. So they might not have necessarily agreed with the outcome of the decision, but they stuck with the bigger picture in a way that Courtois didn't. You know, he had a little campaign in the media which went on unnecessarily, and I think doesn't reflect well upon him. I've spoke about that a few times. But the qualifying has been very good. Domenico Tedesco ultimately has integrated a lot of really good, promising young talent that's been sitting there for what feels like forever. Although this is them now getting their chance over the past year. And it feels like a side that's got a renewed confidence and energy about it again, and an area of positivity. I mean, even this week, Kevin De Bruyne, who kind of has missed the qualifying campaign through a number of injuries, is now back and fit. And he actually met some of the young players and was able to train with them really pretty much for the first time. Just before those last two warm-up matches last week in Brussels, the games against Montenegro and Luxembourg. And he spoke after the game about how impressed he was with some of those players. And he's got a sense that a lot of them are really up for it. You know, their first major tournament. They're really looking forward to it, and the atmosphere is good. So I think they feel as good as they can going into a tournament like this. The big caveat, and again, I've been talking about this a lot, is they've not been tested, I don't think, yet, Ben. Arguably, their biggest real test was the friendly at the end of March at Wembley against England, where they played very well that night and probably should have won Belgium, but England managed to get a draw out of the game. They've got a really good group draw, almost as good as it gets. So the reality is, I think they should be winning that group. The 16 for me is the absolute minimum. It's got to be the minimum. But I think, realistically, a quarter-final place probably is the ultimate target and isn't unrealistic. Beyond that, if you get a little bit of luck and these young players really grab an opportunity and step up, because we don't know how they're going to respond to this environment quite yet, then who knows? But I'm at the stage where I feel I'm relaxed and excited going into this now, because the work's been done, and it's a chance for people to go out there and express themselves, and hopefully in doing that, we can enjoy ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been looking at the group that they've got, kind of looking more in depth at the teams. Obviously, on paper, you'd say Ukraine are the biggest kind of challenges in that group. You look at kind of the players they've got, like yeah, they've got some fantastic talent in that squad. I mean, they've got a couple of goalkeepers, haven't they? Like in Lunan, I can't remember the other guy. Like both of them could be starting goalkeepers. Casteels is obviously going to start for Belgium, but they've had a goalkeeper kind of conundrum, as you said. So then you say, okay, Ukraine are going to be the biggest challenges, and you look at some of the other teams. So I looked at Slovakia, and I kind of like the look of Slovakia. Going to be that classic footballing hipster, isn't it? Like I remember I think it was the last year, everyone was like, all the football hipsters were like Turkey, the dark horses, and they were absolutely tragic. They were so bad, it was awful. But there's some decent kind of players in there. Defensively, I think that's where Slovakia's kind of main strengths are. They've got some very good defence. Obviously, like Matis Skriniar, David Hanko of Feyenoord, and a couple of other guys in there as well. Stanislav Lobotka, like very, very good midfielder from Napoli. Andre Duda has been quite instrumental in their kind of qualifying campaign as well as kind of a creative midfielder. Up front, you're kind of stretching a little bit. I think it's Lucas Haslin of Sparta Prague. He had a really good season. So he's one to look out for. Robert Bozanic is probably going to be the starting striker. He's not at the best of kind of times with Bervis. I think he's got like 8 goals or something. So the thing is, you get into these competitions, isn't it? And how often do we, like Poland always look to Lewandowski, and Lewandowski doesn't always perform in these kind of big finals and stuff like that. And your big strikers don't always play a big role. It's kind of what can the other guys kind of chip in with. So I think Slovakia is a tougher test to begin with than many people have probably given them credit for, just because of how defensively they look like they've got a very strong defence and quite a like workman like kind of strong midfield as well. So I think it's a good one for Belgium to kick off with in terms of getting kind of their teeth into the competition and being like, right, De Bruyne, we need you to break this team down. We need you guys to do this sort of thing. I looked at Romania and I don't know, man. I don't want to be harsh, but I don't really see enough in that side to trouble Belgium. Like they should really roll that side over. I think the best player is like Nikolai Stanku in the midfield from the Saudi Pro League. He's had a very good season in the Saudi Pro League, to be fair. But striker wise, it's our old friend Dennis Dragas. Like he's the guy you're looking at. He's kind of scored the most goals in Turkey, or George Puskas. And I'm telling you now, man, like if George Puskas is the starting striker for Romania, if Belgium concede, like it's shocking, because having watched that guy play for Reading and not been that impressed, he's just not as he cost us a lot of money. Basically, if any Reading fans are listening, they'll know that Puskas cost us a lot of money and we didn't get a lot out of him. And he's gone to Italy and he's not done anything really there. So Romania are the side you think, right, everyone's probably going to beat Romania. It's now those other results. The reason I'm saying that is because when you look at how it kind of is all going to fall, if you don't win the group, you're playing whoever finishes second in that group of death of like the Dutch, Poland, France, and Austria. Any of those sides could finish second, and I just have this horrible feeling for Belgium, Scott, that it's going to be the Dutch against the Belgians in Dusseldorf, so not far away either from either of the borders. It's going to be those two up against each other in that round of 16, which for us, for like the neutral in me, that is going to be a fantastic game because we know how much is kind of at stake in that. I have a sneaky feeling that for some reason Belgium may kind of slip up against like a Slovakia and Ukraine won't, or something like that, and Ukraine go through as winners. Because if you win the group, you play one of the best third place teams, which is what. So if they win the group, quarterfinals it has to be quarterfinals, and then like you said, let's see what happens. But outside of that, I just don't think you want to finish second. You'd probably rather finish third, to be honest. And then I think you could face one of the teams from either Group C or Group B. So you could get like an Italy or someone like that, and then fair enough. But like you kind of just don't finish second. And I don't. They should win this group, but I think it's one of those, like on paper it probably looks a little bit easier than it is. And I think kind of just going completely off piste, this is slightly where I think AFCON and Euro are really different, is that you'd have like a similar level of teams in that, and Belgium wouldn't even qualify like from that group. That's how ridiculous if it was an AFCON, because a team like Romania would be kind of like your Namibia or your Mauritania that just like sneak up and knock you out and go through. So this is where the years are different. You find it a little bit more predictable in that sense, but I just don't think they should be underestimating these sides as much. And I know we're probably going to do the same as an England nation. Like our group's definitely tougher than it looks on paper, in my opinion. Like I think Serbia are obviously a strong team. Like this, they may not have the household names that they used to have, but they still got some very, very good players. Denmark are always very good. won more European trophies than we have, so they've definitely got some pedigree in this. And then Slovenia, Slovenia are like England's Romania, I guess. They're kind of the team that on paper you're like, we should comfortably do them. But no, I'm looking forward to the tournament. Who do you now, like if you had to just look at it, who do you think is actually going to win it? It's one of the more difficult questions, I think. But who do you kind of fancy?
Do you know, that's such an interesting question, because we were talking, I was on BBC Radio 5 live for a while last night, and this was one of the things we were talking about at length at one point. And for the first time, you've got a tournament that's quite open, I think. Most tournaments, most people maybe have 2-3 names at the outside who they think they can do it. I think it's quite open. And I think that's partly because of the format, which I know a lot of people are not happy with. The idea that you can have so many third-placed finishes getting through to the knockout phase is I kind of agree. I don't think that's a great thing. I would rather have a bigger tournament than a tournament of this size with any third place teams going through, to be honest. But it is what it is, and that injects an element of unpredictability about it as well. I think from Belgium's point of view, just coming back to them for a second, I think the real thing to guard against in the group stage obviously is the complacency. It's a great draw for them, but they still got to go out and do the job. And you just underlined why, because the pitfalls of not winning that group could be quite considerable in a way. And the difference between that round of 16 tie and your path to a quarter final is quite a bit different to what it would be if there weren't so many third place teams going through. So it's actually a bit tricky in that sense. I know that FIFA see this as a plus. I think most football fans actually don't. And you mentioned some of those sides. Slovakia, I said last night as well, they came up briefly, and I was keen to emphasise that technically there's a lot of ability in that side. And if they can bring some of that ability, then, they're not, there'll be no pushovers either, So I think the way the fixtures have fallen actually is beneficial to Belgium as well. Who I think's going to win it, I think Spain are going to go far. I stuck my neck out last night and said that. I think there's just so much quality and depth there. I also wanted to highlight that I think Germany are going to have a decent tournament. I know it's been chaotic for quite some time for them, but there's just a sense that although, they're not peaking to anything, there is a general sense that they've got their act together and are a side who can come into a major tournament and compete like they're at a major tournament again. We don't know the advantages that home soil's going to have, which, if it goes for you, can really work for you. But like you, I'm really excited about this. I'm particularly excited about a tournament in one country. Can we just have that? Again, can we go back to the days when it used to be self-contained within one country, no co-hosts, everyone's in one place, because it just works better, I think. Germany has one of the best infrastructures to be able to support an event like this. So I'm looking at it just now going, regardless of who wins it, I don't see how this can be anything other than a pretty decent tournament. And the older you get, and being the oldest member of the Trident here, being the granddad of the pod, I have these blissful memories of tournaments past, and I do sometimes ask myself, is my memory of more recent tournaments jaded by recollections of things? I don't know if other people experience that as well, but I think it's a hugely open tournament, and I think there is genuinely an opportunity for someone to go and do something at this tournament that maybe no one expects, because some of the sides who should do well, I don't think will. I think there will definitely be underachievers, and at all tournaments there's always an overachiever as well. And because of the format, there is the potential for there to be more than one overachiever. So everything's there for Belgium to do well. And ultimately, the outcome of the tournament for them is going to tell us where they're really at. They've had a great year. They're performing generally well under this coach. They need to take their chances. I did see Dominica Tedesco a couple of days ago say after the Luxembourg game, look, our issue has been not scoring when we've been on top and taking our chances when we're dominating sections of games. You have to do that because, and this was the message to his players directly, I think, through the media. He says, you're not going to get away with that at a tournament level. And that's the difference with qualifying in tournaments. In qualifying, you can get away with that throughout a whole campaign. At tournaments, you can't. You have to bring it. You get one chance to do it. So let's see if they can do that in a meaningful way. And if they can, that is a very encouraging sign going into the next World Cup in 2 years, when these players will have another 18 months behind them working away together. So yeah, let's relax and enjoy it and hopefully have a good tournament.
Yeah, I'll enjoy all the games that aren't England games. That's for sure. It's a lot easier to do that than watch. I'm not even gonna. I don't know. I just don't know who's going to win. I'm kind of the same as you. I can't pick a team at all. Like I'll always be like, obviously want England to win. Like that's just, we obviously came so close last year. Although I'm kind of glad if we do win, it's probably better that it's not in the UK after the scenes we saw in central London when we made the final and everyone just lost their minds. So maybe doing it in Germany would be better than. But yeah, I'm fully behind you, Scott. And one country for one tournament, it's so much better, so much better. You really get a flavour of the country then. I agree. I think Germany should do well at home. They usually do quite well at home. I could see a team like Portugal, someone like that, like you said, Spain, like one of those teams. Like France should, in my opinion, win it. I think they should win it. England are obviously one of the favourites, but I don't know. With England, it's England. You know what I mean? It's like we just don't know what's going to happen with us. We need that nice draw to get the nice kind of draw to get through. So yeah, can't wait for that to start. We won't be recording during that, but Scott will probably be jumping on a couple of guest pods and doing stuff like that. So if you want to hear the Belgian Football Podcast opinion on the tournament, definitely keep on that. And we will obviously be tweeting about it and stuff from our social media accounts and that. And yeah, keep people updated. We'll obviously be back next season with our bumper pre-season preview and our Challenger Pro League preview as well. In the meantime, guys, hopefully you enjoy the Euros, enjoy the Olympics, enjoy Tour de France, enjoy Cricket World Cup, enjoy all this ridiculous summer of sport, Wimbledon. I guess it's another one to chuck in, like whatever floats your boat and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic summer of sport, and we'll be back again in the new year, hopefully with Joris back as well, all three of us together. Scott, as always, it's been a pleasure sharing the Pro League season with you.
It has indeed, and it never stops for us, as you were just highlighting there, because we might be away for a few weeks, but a major tournament to enjoy in the meantime. You may see some of us cropping up in other pods throughout that time. The bottom line is, the better Belgium do, the more you're going to hear from us. That's for sure, as is always the case with tournaments. So that's another reason why we hope they do well. But yeah, no sooner will the tournament be finished than we will be convening to bring those big bumper pre-season previews to you, which are amongst our favourite things to put together, aren't they, Ben? And we know people chomp these up. These are amongst our most listened to episodes of the whole season, as people kind of crave information about everything that's been going on over the summer. So everything you need to know and more coming up in a few weeks with them. But enjoy the tournament, enjoy the quiet moments you get, and we won't be away for too long.
No, we definitely won't. And already kind of thinking ahead to that pre-season preview and looking at players that have been signed and all that sort of stuff. So the head's already kind of there anyway. So we're very much prepared for it. But as always, thank you so much for listening along with us this season. If you were there for the whole way, fantastic. Thank you so much for sticking with us. If you jumped in, thanks for joining us as well. We hope you'll join us again next season when we go for the 2024-2025 campaign. If you like what we do, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you've really, really enjoyed the content we've given you this season, please do buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. You find the link on our social media accounts as well. If you've got any kind of feedback as well on how we've done this season, or anything you think we could add to the content and stuff like that, we're always trying to think of new ideas that time allows us to do. So yeah, anything you kind of have that you think could help us along that way, we are more than open to that. But hopefully you've enjoyed what we've done so far and you kind of like the format that we have going. But yeah, enjoy your summer, everyone, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.